Something clearly went off track in the collective West strategy if it's the United States now offering Russia to keep the territories it controls in exchange for a ceasefire. But that's exactly what just happened. For the first time since the beginning of the conflict, Washington has openly presented the contours of a compromise that not long ago would have been seen in Kyiv as a betrayal and in Brussels as surrender. However, during the Paris negotiations, according to Bloomberg and TASS, the US presented a draft agreement to its allies stating directly, Russia keeps all the territories it currently controls, and Ukraine drops any discussion of joining NATO. This document didn't shock anyone simply because the world has started getting used to Trump's political pivot. But beneath the surface, this is a tectonic shift. The US administration, which just months ago was still shipping weapons to Kyiv and funding anti-Russian policy, now openly admits the conflict is not winnable for Ukraine, and instead of selling victory, they're floating a pragmatic freeze scenario, one that used to be labeled unacceptable. The key point? A ceasefire within weeks. This was emphasized in every leak, every statement. Washington wants silence, and fast. Which begs the question, is this really a push for peace? Or is the US simply tired of footing the bill for a stalled war that only generates costs and political fatigue at home? Interestingly, European allies, according to those same sources, reacted with hesitation. Understandably so, for Europe recognizing Russia's control over new territories would undermine the entire sanctions narrative and the moral high ground built over the last decade. Germany, France, and especially Eastern Europe are not ready to officially acknowledge what has already happened de facto. Hence the diplomatic dance. Ceasefire, yes, but no recognition of borders. A compromise in which everyone pretends nothing happened, but everyone breathes easier. Meanwhile, Washington isn't looking to play diplomatic chess forever. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said bluntly, the US will give just days to see whether the plan works. If not, we'll move on to other priorities. A threat to Kyiv? More like pressure. Trump has made it clear there will be no blank checks. If Ukraine isn't willing to compromise, it's on its own. Surprisingly, the US proposal had already been discussed with the Russian side. Bloomberg reported that Steve Witkoff's recent visit to St. Petersburg included intensive talks with Vladimir Putin on a peace settlement. In other words, dialogue is happening. Not through Kyiv, but directly. And that's exactly what triggered Zelensky's outrage, accusing the US envoy of playing by Moscow's rules. Kyiv, as usual, is taking a hard line. No concessions, no talks on territory before a ceasefire. But here lies the paradox. Ukraine demands a ceasefire, while also threatening to restart fighting after. That's what we call a dead end. And it looks like Washington has had enough of it. Any ceasefire discussion now inevitably touches on sanctions. And here too we see a shift. Previously untouchable, sanctions are now part of the deal. Long-term truce. Loosening pressure on Moscow. It's not surrender, it's reality. And for the first time, the US is speaking in terms closer to those proposed by Russia back in 2022. Thus, the Paris meeting might go down in history as the moment the old anti-Russian coalition fractured. Europe is hesitant, Kyiv is furious, and the US seems ready to close the Ukrainian file, not in theory, but in practice. Maybe not officially, but unmistakably. A new reality has arrived.